All right, well, it's 12 o'clock, so welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started today. So thanks for being with us today. I know it's a busy time of year. Deadlines are looming, so we appreciate everyone who made a chance to make it today with us live, and obviously we will be sending out this recorded version later. So thanks for joining for our second in our series of Action Cluster Spotlights here at US Ignite and NIST. As part of our Global City Teams Challenge program. So what we want to do today is two things. We want to have, first of all, give a chance to put the spotlight on some great projects. Michael Dunaway and John Werner have joined us, and we want to give them a chance to tell their story, hone their story. We talked a lot about at the last webinar how important that user story, those user stories are in terms of helping us scope these projects and communicating to all the stakeholders. So I want to give folks a chance to do that here, as well as get their story out to the media and other potential partners. So as I mentioned, we are recording, and we'll make that available at this link, this bit.ly link that you see on the screen right here. We'll take you to the webinar recordings. And we will be emailing everyone who's signed up on the globalcityteams.org website and the other stakeholders. So the second goal, besides just shining the spotlight here, is to really create a community of best practices. So we wanted to have Q&A for those who might not have solidified their projects yet, interested in understanding how these team leads are working on bringing their projects together under the Global City Teams banner. So I'll just give a quick introduction as I'm doing now and make a couple announcements, then we'll hand it over for each presenter to talk about their projects for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor, pull back the curtain a little bit on their process, talk to each presenter about their projects and their partners and how they've managed so far. I'll kick off with some questions, but we will open that up to attendees who have their own questions, and I'll give you a little more instruction about that a little bit later. So first, taking a quick step back, for those of you joining us for the first time or not familiar with US Ignite, US Ignite is foremost a convener. It's an independent 501c3 nonprofit that grew out of initiatives from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, as well as the National Science Foundation. And their goal is to accelerate next generation applications within gigabit broadband communities and the Internet of Things spaces. And the team has a lot of experience with public-private partnerships and works with industry, academia, and government to identify and share best practices in these areas. We have Joe Cochin and Bill McGuire on the call as well, so if you have questions for US Ignite, we can also take those in the Q&A portion. And US Ignite, of course, while we're here, is partnered with NIST and Dr. Sakwu Rhee, who's also on the line, who's the Associate Director for Cyber Physical Systems at NIST. And we created this Global City Teams Challenge to really build on Dr. Rhee's vision of government as playground, which is this idea that government is not just about carrots and sticks, but also can create a sort of third way, an interesting, safe, open space where stakeholders can come together, bring their tech toys and then sensors and innovate and iterate on these projects together. So that's the spirit of the Global City Teams Challenge. And it's also 2.0, version 2.0 of last year's Smarter America Challenge, which was convened by Dr. Rhee as a White House Innovation Fellow. It's a collaboration of partnerships that we call action clusters, and the goal and the focus of the program is to demonstrate Internet of Things applications in real-world settings that are tied to explicit value for citizens, and those demonstrations are all geared towards this June 2015 time frame. And we believe that by convening and publicizing these teams to different stakeholder groups, we can help accelerate the development process, and also NIST hopes to identify standards that might need to be developed across these platforms. And so this program is also a partnership between multiple federal agencies. So US Ignite is providing a website, which many of you may be aware of already, that lists all the action clusters that are part of this program, and the latest up-to-date information is constantly being provided there at globalcityteams.org. And we have about 35 action cluster teams right now. About 5 joined in the last couple of weeks, so we're still taking new projects and encourage everyone to reach out to the team with new project ideas and submissions that you'd like to be a part of it, and we can also help. EOS Ignite can help with describing and navigating the NSF funding opportunities as well, as much as possible. So a couple quick key dates here. These applications for NSF funding are due on the 15th and the 21st. There's 2 different solicitations. You can get an overview at this bit.ly link here. We also want to make sure that everyone is aware of this. We want you to save the date for February 12th and 13th, where we're going to have the Winter Tech Jam, which is another opportunity in closer to DC to highlight your projects, give updates, find any last-minute partners, and also new projects last year convened at that February meeting. As we know, some projects have scopes and lives beyond Global City Teams Challenge, and so sometimes it's beneficial to bring them under the banner, even if they're already ongoing independently. Bring them under the banner of the Global City Teams Challenge has advantages. So we welcome those folks as well to this Tech Jam on February 12th and 13th. If you haven't sent us any updates, one-sliders, et cetera, that were due last week for your project, please do send those to us. That helps us with a press kit that we and Dr. Ree takes around to different government and media stakeholders. Now that gotten through some of that updates and introductions, I want to introduce my 2 gracious panelists here who have agreed to talk about their projects. These are, at the last webinar we had 2 veterans who had been a part of the Smart Cities program last year. The team leads today are new to this program, but not new to the topics and to the types of projects that they're leading here. And so we're excited to have them from Annapolis, Maryland. We have Michael Dunaway, and then we're also going global. This is a Global City Teams Challenge after all, with John Werner, who's going to talk about the projects that he's doing with a city in India around a really special event that they have there every 3 years. So first I'll turn it over to Michael, who's from Annapolis, and I'll just quickly introduce you, Michael, and then turn it over to you. Michael's a veteran of the U.S. Navy, where he served for 27 years, and he is currently CEO of the Aethena Group, a small business that's based in Annapolis, Maryland, which he co-founded. And he is building on 10 years of executive experience in the direction of research and development for Homeland Security, enterprise risk management, and community resilience. He served as a senior director for resilience programs at American Red Cross in the national headquarters, and as well as chief for risk management and for community resilience in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He's a graduate of Naval Academy, has an MA from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts, and a PhD in systems engineering from George Washington University, and is an avid sailor, I've come to know. So let me see if I can unmute you, Mr. Dunaway. I'm going to unmute everyone for a second. Oh, that's not going to work. So Michael, I see your name, but the audio is, I think, separate, and so I'm trying to work with that real quick.
I'll mention, I think, Michael, you have to enter your PIN code on your touch-tone phone.
So I'm unmuting everyone, and I'm just going to mute people through process of elimination here.
Hello, Adam. Can you hear me?
Hey, Michael. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm on the telephone. So.
Great. All right, take it away.
All right, good. Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much. I want to start just by thanking US Ignite and NIST for providing this really fantastic opportunity for us to do some great work, collectively as groups, but in our particular group for the Annapolis Human Geographic Mapping Project. This is a rare opportunity to be able to focus on something like this. So thank you both for institutionally for sponsoring this project, this program. So what I want to talk about is a project that we have, and the scenario is focused in Annapolis, Maryland, and it grows out of the inspiration for this project is really twofold, and I'll mention the first inspiration, which is Hurricane Isabel in 2003. What you're looking at on the screen here is poor Alex Haley, the author of Roots, who there's a statue of him in downtown Annapolis on the dock, on the city dock, where in his novel Roots, Kunta Kinte actually came ashore, and that's pretty well documented historically. Alex Haley did a lot of work on that. What you can't see is that down about 5 feet below Alex Haley's head, there are 3 poor little kids cast in bronze who are underwater right now. And they're underwater because in Hurricane Isabel, we had about an 8.5-foot storm surge that came up the Chesapeake Bay. Annapolis is at the northern end of the Chesapeake Bay, and it inundated the city for about 4 days. And over that period of time, Adam, I'll ask you to go to the next slide if you would. Over that, thank you. So over that period of time, we flooded out, if you look in the picture in the upper left-hand corner there, flooded out the city dock area and a chunk of the historic district of downtown Annapolis. Just a couple of statistics. We had 15 businesses that were lost, never reopened. 100 buildings suffered from structural collapse. We had 570 homes that were declared uninhabitable. 196,000 out of our 230,000 residents in this region lost electrical power for some period of time over that storm. And we lost 30% of the water production for the area, and altogether the area of region of Maryland suffered about $410 million in damage, $12 million in Anne Arundel County alone, and most significantly at the U.S. Naval Academy. You can see one view of it on the right-hand side there. There was $120 million at the U.S. Naval Academy in damage at the Naval Academy alone because the laboratory facilities were completely flooded out. So in the lower right-hand corner, what we are doing in this project is we are focusing this effort on an actual scenario that's basically the history of Hurricane Isabel and the impact that it had in that region in the historic district and Naval Academy that is in that square, that red square you see on the aerial photograph of the Annapolis Peninsula. We're doing that for 2 reasons. One is that that it's a finite area. We can actually get our hands on it for the purposes of this project. And the other is that we have actual data on what took place during that hurricane. And so the scenario that we are developing is focused on that. Okay, Adam, next picture if you would, please. So this is a schematic of the project. And if I can start on the lower left-hand corner down there, this is the real crux of, it's a twofold technology project, really. The major part of which is to develop the ability to actually map the human population. One of the results of Hurricane Isabel that was realized was that we didn't have a good picture of the relationship between the population to the actual geography and terrain in terms of the individuals and their community social networks. And that had a real impact because when the hurricane began to approach the city, we were caught off guard largely in terms of the level of impact that the hurricane had and the number of people who should have been or could have been warned with a higher degree of fidelity than we were able to generate. And that doesn't have anything to do with what we didn't know about the storm. It had to do largely with what we didn't know about the population. So in the lower left-hand corner of this graph, if you think of a population of a community, the way we think of a GIS map, and that's what's in the center section there, where we have a natural environment and a community infrastructure. We have a natural environment that we have maps of, and we have the built environment, which is all the buildings and structures and everything that goes into a human society. We know the critical infrastructures like the electrical system, water distribution, the transportation, communication networks, all those kinds of things. What we cannot do at this stage is map the human population in the same way and insert that map into what would be the event or impact space in a large-scale disaster. So if you think about the human population, you can kind of disaggregate it the same way you disaggregate the geographic terrain into everything from emergency managers and government agencies and private sector businesses all the way to the hospital and medical system, faith-based organizations that play a real active role in disaster preparedness and response, schools, universities, the school systems, the districts, and then the private citizens and the groups themselves. So one dimension of this project, and this is the original research and development into this, is to develop the methodology for mapping this human population and basically depicting it in the layers of our community infrastructure so we can have a much better sense of the situational awareness of the entire community, including its civic infrastructure. And what we will then do, and this mapping and the architecture that we will build to do this is going to be based completely on open standards. So the ability to modify it in various communities, in any number of communities, will be basically open to the people who live there. And that's one of the goals that we have for this project, is to make the outcome accessible to anyone who could replicate it and use it in their community. So we're going to take that capability and we're going to embed that in a virtual business emergency operations center. And the Business Emergency Operations Center is being developed by the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. I'm sorry, could I ask you to go back one slide very quickly, Adam? I missed something important that I should have mentioned. So on the bottom of this view graph, this slide, are the members of our team. And we have two major ones in the center there. One is the city of Annapolis, and then the University of Louisiana. And I'm going to mention that a little more detail in a second. Left-hand side, we have the Berkman Center for the Study of the Internet and Society. That's at Harvard University. The Open Geospatial Consortium, and I will say more about them in a minute because they're providing a real important technical service in terms of the open source, the open standards that we're maintaining. And then two small businesses. One is mine, Aethena Analytics, and then another one, T-Secure, which is a company outside Washington, D.C. that does work in data security and cybersecurity. Okay, so back to where we were. Thank you. Okay, so the goal is to develop this system, as I mentioned, in open standards, provide situational awareness for everything, including the human population, and then insert that in a virtual business emergency operations center that will work alongside or in parallel with the normal EOC, where the first responders reside, and collect data and information from the private sector and the community at large. So if you think of the Internet of Things being comprised of the incident-related data, environmental, weather data, and all those kinds of things, and then also communications from the local population in terms of data from crowdsourcing and social networks, and then non-governmental organizations like Red Cross and other organizations as one aspect of the communication system. What you want to be able to do is integrate all of that and provide that larger community picture to the professionals in emergency management who operate out of the Emergency Operations Center. So in a nutshell, that's the goal of this project, is to develop the ability to map the community and then put that information embedded within the information in the global information system maps that we use in EOCs and emergency operations centers, and then provide a complete picture of the community, and not as it is right now, just a partial picture where we don't know the population but we know everything else. So that's the goal of this project, and then to develop a virtual business emergency operations center that can be the repository of that information and then provide the ability to combine it with the EOC information. So next slide, please. Thank you. Just a brief map of the schedule for this. We're working on this. This is very high level, and that's a first cut on the developmental schedule. Two things I would point out. About mid-February, we hope to have determined all the data inputs that will be required to the VBOC. These are environmental data as well as community data. And then on the far side, after we conduct the scenario and the test case, which will be conducted probably late May, early June, or somewhere in there, depending on the schedule, one thing we really intend to do is to develop a ConOps, or a concept of operations, for a virtual business emergency operations center and its utility and feasibility for joining with an EOC as a community resource that the community can rely on in a disaster. And that's one of the large goals out of the end of this immediate GCC project, is for us to develop the template to replicate VBOCs in other communities alongside the network mapping system that we're developing. Okay, that's all I have. That's, in a nutshell, that's the project. I'm going to turn it over now to John and let him talk about the project that the MIT is leading.
Great, thanks. This is Adam again. Appreciate that, Michael. It's a great overview, a very interesting project, and we'll come back to some questions in just a minute. So John, just before I turn it over to you, I'll just briefly introduce you. John is the head of innovation and new ventures for the Camera Culture Group within MIT Media Lab, and he's working on new imaging platforms, developing hardware and software technologies for augmenting human vision. He's a co-instructor at MIT on similar topics. He was the chief mobilizing officer, managing director, and founding member of Citizen Schools, which is an education initiative that came out of a 1995 concept paper that mobilizes adults to do skills training in schools. Probably butchering the description of that, but you can tell us a little more if it's not relevant for this project, but he's one of the co-founding members of that Citizen Schools. He also founded Ideas in Action, a TEDx program in Boston. He's an All-American triathlete, a Loeb Fellow at Harvard University, among many other things. And we're really happy to have you here, John, to talk about your Kumbh Mela project. It's really exciting for me. Just a personal note, spent 3.5 years in India and heard about the Kumbh Mela while I was there and had the big one, and I'll let him tell you all about it, but it's an exciting project to be under the Global City Teams banner, and I will, John, now forward over to you, make you a presenter. Just 1 minute. Let's see. John, can I hear you? Can you say
try
something,
to
John?
have some additional meetings.
Yep.
Let me go and suggest the Planning Future Initiative.
Sorry, I'm having trouble finding you on the screen here to make you the presenter. Apologies, everyone. Let me just.
This is Joe, and I think everyone should be in this afternoon, but I don't know what their schedule is.
One second.
And how many people are you thinking?
Try to log.
Hey, Adam,
Thanks,
this is
Joe.
Joe. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I see it. Thanks.
Okay. I think I just took care of it.
Great. Appreciate it.
So do you see my first slide, Adam?
I do. Great.
So should I go?
Yeah, absolutely. Take it away. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. It's an honor to be presenting to this group and to those who hear this asynchronously. Looking forward to getting feedback. We're excited about this. So I'm at the MIT Media Lab. We're all about deploying our ideas. Years ago, the lab was known Demo or Die. The latest is Deploy or Die. And there's close to 30 groups at the Media Lab. As Adam said, I'm part of the Camera Culture Group. And we work with hardware and software. And we think it's a very exciting time in that space, and that there's a lot of things coming down the pike. Our group, a few years ago, worked on femto photography, trillion frames per second photography, and we could see light move, and we could use that to see around corners. At the same time, Ramesh Rasker, who runs our group, was talking about health applications for imaging technology, and we realized that if you took a smartphone and added a dollar attachment, few dollar attachment, you could get your eye prescription. And for over 200 million people who couldn't get to a doctor or a clinic or a hospital, this could be game-changing if they could get access to this, because they could get their prescription and then know what glasses to get. And Ramesh raised some money for this, a few $1,000,000, and commercialized it. And in doing so, he decided he wanted to focus a lot of our group on coming up with technical solutions for challenges like this. And we've run a number of camps in India, and we've built devices for all these parts of the body, kind of like the medical tricorder in Star Trek, if you know Bones when he would beam off the planet. So we've devised these devices, and we've done this part of a program that we're calling REDX, Rethinking Engineering Design Execution. And the idea is that we can come up with ideas at the Media Lab, but then we want to go into community with clinicians, with patients from that community, and devise these devices as a way to identify talent to help us in parallel do continued research and develop and validate and scale. And so we've come up with this plan, this 5-step process. We're trying to get the right people involved at the right time. Well, and we're calling this the framework, the football framework or soccer framework, because the goalie often doesn't score the goal. You have to hand it off to the right person. And here's some of the innovators in India that have built some of the devices that we've been dreaming of, and we're in the process of deploying them. Recently, we've been going deep with this particular city, Nasik. It's 2 hours from Mumbai. This is the new airport in Mumbai, and it's the wine capital of India. It's a beautiful place. 2 million people live there, and it's the 16th fastest growing city on the planet. So it's an emerging city. And in this spot, every 12 years, there's a Hindu pilgrimage. And this coming August 2015, for 30 days, Nasik is expecting 30 million people to come to this city. And as I went to Nasik, I would see the people walking there, making the pilgrimage. And the Kumbh Mela happens every 3 years, and it rotates among 4 cities. And the next one up is Nasik. And we're very interested in this big event. We're calling it a pop-up city. And there are pop-up cities around the globe for a bunch of different reasons, tsunamis, refugee camps. And this grid kind of shows how we see this Kumbh Mela. It's uncontrolled, but it's predictable. We can see it happening. We know it's going to happen in August, and we know 3 years later there's going to be another one in one of the other cities, and then 12 years later it'll be back in Nasik. This is the mayor of Nasik. I've gotten to know him quite well. And as I visited Nasik the last few times, I've noticed them widening the roads. They're pulling up trees, and they're getting ready for the influx of people. Now, Ramesh, who runs my group, is from Nasik, and I was in Kochi, India, at a conference where 2 Nasikers met each other. Ramesh met Sunil, and Sunil is the modern-day Lorax. I don't know if people on this call have heard of Dr. Seuss's Lorax. Sunil came up with a way that SMS phones could translate words, and it's a platform that 150 million people use to do business transactions and to communicate. And he's called Dictionary Man because millions of trees weren't cut down to make dictionaries because he came up with this process. Sunil, this is his family. That's his dad. I don't think his dad received a high school education. This is the farm his dad leads, runs. And in Sunil's house, he has a kindergarten. His bedroom's on the other side of this wall, and there's Sunil taking care of one of his kindergarten classes. Well, Sunil and Ramesh at this conference kind of talked about how when the Kumbh Mela would come to Nasik, they would hide under the bed. They would pretend it wasn't happening, and they would wait out the 30 days for it to come and go. And the government, and these are all government officials that we're meeting with, who widen the roads and build the pontoon bridges. They really focus on the infrastructure. And Ramesh and Sunil said, we're both technology guys. Let's work with innovators, the next generation of leaders of NASIG, and have them come up with technical solutions for a lot of the challenges that a pop-up city would encounter. And we've identified these 6 categories that we wanted to go deep on. And we met with civic leaders of NASIG. So these are the heads of the newspapers, the rickshaw company, the buses, the telecom, the newspapers, the produce leaders. We asked them to identify their challenges. And here's another meeting at a hotel where we identified their challenges. And what we did was we worked with the 20-somethings, the innovators, to identify these problems. And we came up with 500. We used Google Docs. And then we've run 4 camps to date. We're calling them Kumbhathons. They're not hackathons. They're more than that, because we curate ideas ahead of time, and then the ideas that come out of it we really want to deploy. We want to scale them. So there's a post aspect to these camps. So instructors from MIT and affiliates of our group come to NASIG, and we lead the students on coming up with these projects. And here are some of the sessions. Here they're presenting to panels. And these are some of the projects that we've identified to date. And this January, 24th to 31st, we're going to have our next Kumbhathon, where we're going to double down on these projects and really think about, what we need to develop them. And we're bringing a number of mentors who can help with this. And then this is the MIT Media Lab. In the spring, we want to bring these projects to the Media Lab and scour the MIT community and people around the U.S. to come and be matchmakers to help scale these ideas. And our hope is to scale them at the Kumbhathon at the Kumbh Mela in August. And here's the kind of a breakdown, the purpose, approach, and impact of what we're doing. And this is sort of a timeline. And here's a Gantt chart that kind of shows what MIT is doing, what experts, mentors are doing, and what the local folks in NASIG are doing. And you see the conference in the Kumbh Mela. And then this is a flyer to recruit people. These are the different mentor organization groups that we've identified to help be mentors. Colgate-Palmolive, that does a lot of transactions. Deloitte and Tata Consulting Services, they do a lot with big data and scaling things. I put US Ignite because we've been working with Adam, and he's been a great friend. I talked to Xerox this morning. They can't wait to work with us. And these are some of the mentors we're bringing, from Mo, who's from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who's at the MIT Media Lab, to one of the top winning Oscar winner in Bollywood. We've invited her and her husband. So there's a range of people that we've invited. One of the Kennedys, Stephen Kennedy Smith, to kind of be mentors, someone from Jawbone. And we've been getting some press around what we've been doing. For every time we come, people want to write about it. People are also writing about this Kumbh Mela and the pop-up city. We also see this as helping emerging cities. The fact that NASIG is a 2 million person city, it's a satellite city of Mumbai. There are a lot of cities that fit this profile, and we feel we have a kind of a competitive advantage in that Sunil and Ramesh are known by everyone in the city, and people want to work with us. We want to scale this, go fractal, and see if we can figure out how to do it with this city, do it with other cities. And it's been a great journey to be on, and I look forward to getting feedback on what we're trying to do from this group.
Great. Thank you so much for that, John. Yeah, I want to turn to questions now. And these are two projects that are a little bit different in how they've come together. Obviously, the Kumbh Mela Kumbhathon series leading up to this August event has been in motion for some time now, over a year. Let me just, Joe, can I ask you to make me the presenter again? And then the Annapolis project has catalyzed and really come together as a result of the Global City Teams challenge. And so these are, two different types of projects and examples but that both really fit within the spirit of what Global Cities Teams is all about and trying to support in various ways. So we're excited to have both of you here, and just in terms of a little bit of housekeeping, if folks want to ask questions, I'm going to unmute everyone again. I'm going to dare to do that. And if you do not want to be heard, please mute yourself, which you can do through the application. And just as a reminder, we are recording, so if you ask a question, you will be recorded and put on the web. So if you don't want to do that, you can also chat your question to us in the GoToMeeting chat box, and we can read it off and get some thoughts from Michael and John. So for the next about 20 minutes, I wanted to dive in a little bit more about some of the scoping out questions of these projects, and because they're different, we'll get some kind of different perspectives. But generally, just wanted to kick off with I guess the question to Michael first, which is, you showed your timeline that leads up to the June demonstration, and we saw John's timeline, which had some prototyping in June that aligns with the Global City Teams Challenge. Do you see your project? How do you see your project scope and sort of timeline sort of outside of the June demonstration? Is there a broader mission? I think both projects talked about scaling their initiatives to other places, but just wanted to get a sense of how you saw your project in the context of the Global City Teams Challenge.
So I think the best way to answer that question is to put it in the context of what the Global City Teams Challenge has actually enabled for us in this project set. So I had looked, when I was at the Department of Homeland Security, I was in the Science and Technology Directorate, and I had looked at the potential for using network analysis as a method for obviously mapping the community, but also really based on the map and the knowledge of how the community is actually laid out as a social structure, as well as a geographic structure, being able to do better planning, improved planning in emergency operations centers in preparation for disasters. And then more than that, and this is where I think there's a real hole right now in our capabilities nationally, and that is to plan at a high degree of fidelity for the recovery after a major disaster. And we've seen this in Katrina, obviously, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, other events. One of the real challenges that remains, I mean, we've worked very hard over a couple of centuries, actually, to build a really professional emergency response capability in the country, where we lack in the ability to plan how to recover a very large geographic region. That's a pretty complex problem. So that's actually a very complex problem. And what we wanted to do with this project was to start kind of at the beginning. And that is to look at a very, as I mentioned in the Annapolis area here, a very finite region in that area that was the immediate impact zone of Hurricane Katrina. And then use that as a method as a way to put together the project that would map that community, but then also, more importantly, build the template for how to do community mapping. And that's a big challenge in its own right. So what this Global Cities Challenge has enabled us to do is to get a real start under, quite frankly, a very credible mechanism, both in US Ignite and with NIST backing, to do the foundational work that could then put us in a position to continue working on this probably over some length of time. It's a big project to do this, but it's a big project to build the architecture that one would use, not in a small community, but in a very large city. So this is a real kickstart. I think that the US Ignite and the Global Cities Challenge and this NIST backing is a real kickstart for us to do the initial groundwork for
what would probably be a much bigger project. So at the end of our deliverable at 6 months in June, what we hope to have is, as I said, two things. One is at least a rudimentary capability to map a community in a very finite area for a finite technical demonstration, a concept demonstration, a pilot test. And then secondly, to write a concept of operations for how this would fit into a business emergency operations center that would then correlate or coordinate with the emergency operations centers in general. If we can crack that nut, I think that could be a very significant contribution, and that's what we hope to do.
Mm-hmm. And John, you know, for the, I think there's about 15 projects within this network of, I mean, you kind of have your own Global Cities platform, if you will, with the projects, the way the way the program has emerged. I mean, how do you see scoping out these individual projects, and what's your goal for the August, you know, event, and your hope for June in terms of I know obviously the priority is deploy, but in terms of how you feel like the scope is going to evolve for each individual project. I mean, do you expect certain ones to drop out, you know, over the next 3 or 4 months? Do you expect them all to get to at least some level of viability? How do you think about that, the scope of all these individual projects in terms of the time frame that
yeah,
June and now August?
You know, we went from 500 to like 16, and I think we want to double down on the projects we have: food distribution, cashless payment, crowd management, epidemic tracker, bike sharing, local community radio, shops online, WikiNastig, Live Nastig, oil extractor, Go Food Go, and 3D Map. And then I think this next January Kumbhathon, we may identify a few others, but we really want to double down on these and then figure out which ones can scale. And then we think if they can scale at the Kumbh Mela, they may have applications to other pop-up cities. So we're trying to you know, create some experiences that can inform people around the world. And you know, a big part of this is to say to the next generation, they can solve problems with mobile devices and the cloud and big data that generations before just couldn't. They didn't have access to this kind of technology. And so a lot of this is just creating a mindset where people are problem solvers. And it's been great to work with the civic leaders to get them to talk and realize, wow, you know, I didn't realize I could solve this problem. You know, just like simply like getting produce from one side of town to the other in an efficient manner. They're technological solutions that that these innovators we're working with are coming up with. So I think we want to scale, but we're building this plane and kind of flying it at the same time, and we see this having implications for other cities that we might work with in the future. Adam, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of folks feel like they're flying the plane and building it at the same time as well. And so it's helpful to hear how different team leads think about these projects and their evolution and what your expectations are. And so, you know, Michael, you know, I think it sounds like you're moving towards this milestone in June. It's a very important milestone, but I think depending on how things come together, you know, this larger vision or larger project is somewhat unknown until you get to these milestones, and then hopefully the partners and the resources that will emerge to support that sort of longer term vision and planning. And I think that's what Global Cities hopes to help enable as well, is to take some of these ideas and these concepts and just get them at least to that early stage viability where they're tested out in a real world setting that can hopefully accelerate some other resources. And for John, I guess part of the follow-up to that question was just, you know, when you've gone to 500 to 15 and you want to really focus on a few projects that will hopefully scale, and a lot of that will probably be discovered at this next event. And I think a lot of the projects are still, I think, looking at sort of January to February timeframe to hone in on what that scope is, that what's going to really make it what's going to be viable, what's going to scale and be useful to build for the June target. And for your project, are you thinking about partners in terms of, do you expect some of the mentors to become longer-term partners to some of these new applications?
Yeah, we're excited for the mentors to bring data scientists that can help with the scaling of the ideas. And a lot of the people who are coming up with these solutions, they don't have experience with scale, and some of these partners and future partners, I think, do. And a lot of people have a real interest in understanding the developing world. So this is a way to kind of bring a number of parties together that's a win-win scenario.
So this is software, and I have a question, John.
Yeah.
So I kind of like your slogan saying "deploy or die." Yep. That's kind of in line with what Global City Teams Challenge is trying to do. So my question is there any plan or any kind of roadmap for deployment? Even before going to scaling it, you probably want to kind of see at least few deployments to test it out, whether it actually works in real-world environment.
Yeah, well, so that's why we've kind of lined up a few of the partners we have that have some experience with that. And so we're trying to take that to the next level. And I think these pop-up cities, Harvard University, I think the Business School, the Divinity School, the Design School, quantified the last Kumbh Mela about 2.5 years ago and did a nice job on that. At MIT, we like to kind of build things and tinker things. So I think getting the right partners back at MIT, once we identify the solutions, I think there's also a matchmaking to try to roll out some of these things. So that's another kind of level of dynamic here that we're intrigued with. That we're more facilitators of this, and we're bringing the best out in the people from NASIG. We're bringing the best out in the mentors who may be able to scale. We're bringing the best out of a lot of the labs and innovative thinkers back in MIT and trying to drive this. Does that answer your question?
So I think one way that I think we can closely collaborate is certainly what we can do from Global City Team Challenges, finding partners for you. The way that we would like to operate is if you want to if you have a few examples of the specific project or specific deployment example. I mean, it doesn't need to be deployed today, but something that we can bring to our partners and say, here are a few examples that could be deployed if they can find partners.
That would be great.
Yeah, so, but to do that, you probably have to, I mean, it sounds like you have probably hundreds of projects, and I cannot bring hundreds of projects to all the partners. So you want to give me a few examples, or it's very promising example that can kind of be appealing to the partners. Then I can certainly, we can certainly help you find partners. That's kind of what we can contribute from the Global City Teams Challenge perspective.
That would be great, and I think I alluded to this, but a lot of hackathons, they turn into more social events where people come together, they create something, and then they disperse, and nothing happens with what's been created. And we're curating the ideas ahead of time, then we're building the project out, and then we want to find the right partnerships to roll out the ones that have the best chance. And that's why I kind of gave the pre-story about what we've been doing with medical devices, because that's how we learn that. And I see, the Global Cities Network and people like yourself as great connectors for this. So as it's almost like making, the sap. As we boil down, all these ideas and get the few, we really want to get the right partners involved. And, in the developing world, a lot of the challenges we're identifying, like, a bike share, that's easy in major cities in the U.S., in the developed world. But in a place, where there isn't that infrastructure, what are solutions around that? And the things we've come up with are incredibly novel, and we're real excited to, develop them.
Yeah, it sounds like from the timeline perspective, after this January event where some of the ideas are worked on, crystallized, et cetera, and you come back and bring the ideas to the MIT community, that might be a great chance to also bring back the sort of survivors of the projects to the US Ignite community as well, and see if we can't bring some other partners to the table that might fill some gaps.
So I can see a scenario where that event is maybe, US Ignite is a co-partner and some of your community comes to it, or maybe we do an event where we a virtual event where we do something with the US Ignite community.
Great, great. Well, yeah, we'll definitely take that discussion offline. So going back to partners, I guess, Michael, I had a question for you. I think your project probably looks a lot more like some of the other projects that are out there in terms of how they've come together, and I just was curious about whether you had any tips or thoughts about getting sort of the right local partners involved. Is there any particular strategy you used? I mean, I think convening people when you have like MIT lab is in the brand of that, and you've got this NOSIC community. The specific community is already sort of chosen, and everyone kind of came together through the personal relationship with Ramesh that we heard about. How did you think about or go about getting partners on board in Maryland, in Annapolis?
That's a really good question, Adam, and actually it's probably the tough nut to crack, not just in this project, but in communities in general, particularly when you're trying to do something about preparing for disasters and the capability to recover and all that kind of thing. I mean, this is sort of, as everybody knows, I mean, the Red Cross shows this in statistics they run with surveys year after year after year. You're lucky if you can get between 15 and 40% of the population to actually take action prior to a disaster or to prepare for anything. So that's a real challenge all over. We've had real good support so far in the city of Annapolis in that regard, and I've got two very strong advocates. One is our director of emergency management. He's the former deputy fire chief for the city. And then in the mayor's office, the ombudsman for the city of Annapolis has been a real advocate in terms of turning out the right folks in the city government and other areas of their counterparts at the county level as well, to form an initial committee to really help us focus on this problem. And so we had a conference about 2 weeks ago at the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, which is a Smithsonian-run institution. It's a compound, really, or built on an old farm that was deeded to Smithsonian 100 years ago. And they have a coastal mitigation, a coastal environment and mitigation research laboratory about 10 miles south of Annapolis, Maryland, and it's on one of our rivers. And we had a conference. We called it the Annapolis Water Management Conference, and it brought together civic organizations, city and county officials, our group, some members of our group, and the goal was to kind of initially get our hands around who all is involved in water management. And that's on the positive side, where you're looking at managing water as a resource for the community, and that's everything from rainwater to water table and coastal resources and access to the seafront and all that kind of thing, the bay, all the way down to the other side of the scale, which is how do you manage it when it gets over its banks, and how do you mitigate against it. So we had a conference, and the initial focus was to get everybody together, and these were people who had never really been brought together in one room to talk about this problem set. The most important outcome of all was that everybody agreed they wanted to continue with this group and continue with this focus. And I should point out, I actually briefed this project a little bit different briefing slides than I used here. There were more of them, for starters, but I briefed this project to everybody, and it sort of served as a catalyst for some of the discussion. Very positive outcome was that everybody wants to continue on with this. So at the community level, if we can continue to bring organizations and to expand our network inside the city itself, both at the private sector level and the public sector level, that's a really good start. And we think we'll be able to do that. The next outreach step for us, and this is really for me because I'm a resident of Annapolis, is to begin outreach with the community leaders on the business community side and in civic organizations, and get them engaged to provide us some members who would serve as the test not organizers, but the test focal points for the social network that we're going to build and to map. And so that's the next step. We'll be working on that over the next month or so to get those level of volunteers who will actually participate in the exercise.
Interesting. Yeah. Great. I want to ask if anyone online has any other questions for each or either of our speakers. Feel free to chime in. I'm okay with awkward silence because it produces it produces voices that haven't been heard. So I'm just gonna let it be a little more silent, and then I'll chime in with some other questions. Cool. I think one of the issues that a lot of people have questions about is just how, as these projects emerge, how do you find the resources to get them done and to really convene them? And I would pose this question about how you think about project management to both of you, because I think some people might assume that, John, as part of Media Lab, you have infinite resources, which I think, as you mentioned to me, is not necessarily the case. And also, other project leads have talked about the use of students, PhD students, et cetera, as excellent resources for taking these projects forward and really managing it. So I just want to get a little bit of insight from each of you about how the project management side is shaping up and what kind of resources you've been able to use for each of these projects. Michael, you want to?
Sure. This is Michael. I'll just a quick comment. So at this water conference I was talking about, two of the participants were from our community college, and I think our community college in Anne Arundel, the Anne Arundel Community College, AACC, probably like most community colleges, is where most of our first responders come from, and that's on the medical side, fire, police, the whole gamut. And then a lot of our small business owners also come from the community college. And so one of the goals is to tap into that resource, and I've got some pretty good networks there. And they actually have a couple of really good programs. One of them is on Homeland Security, and then obviously the first responder areas of fire safety, fire engineering, and policing and law enforcement, those kind of things. So I intend to tap into that and have had some initial conversations with folks to get some young people involved in this project, which is actually a separate but very important goal, and that is to not simply use a bunch of folks who have experience in these fields, and we have some, but to get young people involved at even the senior high school level, but at the community college level, and some of our younger business owners involved in this, so they can begin thinking about the community that they're going to inherit and run, and that's part of the goal of this as well. So that's kind of a resource we're trying to tap into.
This is a passion project. We've been organizing it on a budget of like rubber bands and Scotch tape and Band-Aids. We're real excited. We think the most valuable thing is the people's time and the talent, but at some point we need to get real about raising funds to make this sustainable. And I think as the Media Lab thinks about how to really deploy ideas here, I think this can become one of the examples where of the 30 labs at the Media Lab, a lot of the research could use these types of events, pop-up cities, emerging city partners, as a way to experiment. So we're sort of in the startup phase. But we got big plans here, and I've gotten interns, and I don't know. I don't think Ramesh sleeps, so that helps. That he's probably not efficient all the time, but it helps allows us to get stuff done.
So you are able to get students involved from undergrad or graduate students? Or who?
Yeah, we have a lot of students who are taking the finance courses and not feeling like it's relevant, and they've been real excited to kind of help us. We have someone who helped with the malaria project out of the Clinton Foundation, and someone from Japan that's an expert. These are two Sloan business students who are experts at matching problems with solutions. So I feel like I have some real talent, helping with that.
Great.
And then the people of NASIG. I mean, these are people who've never heard of hackathons and didn't realize that they could solve problems in their 20s, and they've been just amazing, and it's real worth it, just to experience the teamwork that these guys have.
That sounds great. Well, thank you both for joining us. We hit 1 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know it's a busy time. So John and Michael, thank you so much for sharing about your projects and sharing a little bit about how those have come together and how you're thinking about managing them moving forward. We will send this link out in an email, and you can also get it at bit.ly GCT show spotlights. That's it. bit.ly GCT spotlights. We'll have it linked there as well soon. Thank you so much. We'll also send an email about future webinars in the new year, and excited to hear from other Action Cluster team leads as well. Thanks everyone, and please don't hesitate to email me, William McGuire, Joe Cochin, if you have any questions about the program and want to get involved in some other way. Thanks so much. Take care.